When I thought about which Bible story resonated with me, I immediately turned to David and Goliath, because when I was a child, that was a favorite Bible story. But I want to start by saying I'm so pleased that we continue the tradition of giving the Bibles to children. I remember my son's favorite Bible was one that his grandma Pearl gave him, and he would read it. And if you have small children, you'll know that when they're being too quiet, you wonder what they're doing. So one day, Parker was being particularly quiet, and I yelled out, "Parker, what are you doing?" And he said, "Reading my Bible." And I thought, oh, okay, what kind of a bad mommy am I? I was thinking the child was getting into something bad. But my favorite story was not necessarily his favorite story, but he did like this one. So we know the story of David and Goliath. King Saul and his armies were fighting the Philistines, and the Philistines were a really warlike people, and they were trying to expand their territory into Israel. And the Philistines had the advantage because they controlled the iron industry. That is, they were able to make most of the iron that was used to make the weapons was controlled by the Philistines. So this meant that they had swords and other weapons, and that the Israelites didn't necessarily have those. So during this particular encounter, the Philistines actually appeared to have another advantage, and that is that they had a giant, and that was Goliath, who was over 9 feet tall. And not only was he a giant, 9 feet tall, but he also had the armor to protect him. So here comes little David, who is a shepherd, and David says, "I will go up against Goliath." And of course, we know that people laughed and they scoffed and they said, "What can you do?" And you look at the contrast. Goliath was an experienced warrior. David, as I said, was a shepherd. Goliath was huge, and David was small. The giant had the armor, and David did not. Goliath had a sword, a spear, and a shield. David carried a staff, a slingshot, and 5 smooth stones. Goliath laughed at David, and he laughed at the God of Israel. But David was strong in his faith, and he bravely faced Goliath. And we all know the story. When the dust settled, it was apparent that the superhuman strength of the giant Goliath was not an advantage over the almighty power of God. So as we think of David and what his heroic courage it took, we need to remember that it was God who enabled him to overcome Goliath. And that is the same God who is with us today when we trust him. So whatever our giants may be, and you know the giants in your life, whatever they may be, including my own, my giant grief, God can enable us to overcome all of our giants too. Amen.